trying to have a conversation with you. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Are you listening? Do you hear me? 'Cause I'm trying to have a conversation with you.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of I'm Trying to Have a Conversation with You. I'm Monique, and that's.
I'm Kasha.
And today we are trying to have a conversation about New Year, New Me, resolution, testing, and how to stay the course, because I feel like it's something the new year always seems to bring about for people sometimes like a reset button or I don't know what it does, but people always feel like, oh, the minute they pop the cork and it's like, Happy New Year, I'm gonna be all new, I'm gonna be different, I'm gonna be all these things. This episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about where did this come from? Where did this idea come from? There's been a couple different versions, I feel like, of this idea that have come about. And then I want to talk about some of the things that I personally have done also, because I feel like we've all done resolutions and different things. And just have a little discussion about that and what our thoughts are. Because I find some of the stuff that I already know Kasha is going to say, I find to be very interesting. First thing I want to ask you, Kasha, do you think the new year, new me, all the things like that, is it about the change of the calendar or is it about the commitment you think for people?
I think it's like a little bit of both. I feel like we're always kind of looking for a reset. We're always kind of looking for like, oh, a way to start anew. So I think it's like just the excuse and I'm like, well, I can commit after the calendar changes. I'm gonna cut up for now. But after that calendar changes, I'll commit, So I think it's a little of both.
I think that is very, the minute you said that, I was like, yep, that's what it is. Because I think people, especially, it's like with anything, we start out, even the day, we start out the day with high hopes of this is what I'm going to do today. And by like 5 o'clock, we're like, I'll try again tomorrow. And I
Amen.
feel like the new year is kind of like the culmination of it. But I think, like you said, it's part of both because I feel like people think with the new year, I'm going to be more committed to whatever it is because it is new and different. It is like the sun rising again and starting over. So um, like I said, I think today we want to talk about New Year's resolutions. I want to talk about where did the root of it come from. Fasting is another thing that happens a lot in the month of January and where its roots came from. That new year, new you, because that wasn't something that was always said. That's a new
Hmm.
mindset that I think kind of came up. And then I do
Yeah.
want to talk about like why most people fall off because with me researching this topic, usually there's a specific date, but usually by mid-January, they say most people have quit whatever their resolution or fasting or New Year, New Me, and they're gone. So I looked up some ways to stay the course. If you really are wanting to commit to change, how is it that you can commit to change? To me,
Yeah.
that was one of those things because we all do it. And I will tell you too, like this episode for me was a talking point because this year, not that it's my first year, but this year I really, I think, dove in a little deeper into the fasting because my church does a church-wide fast and they've done it every year. In previous years, I've been like, okay, I'm going to fast. I have fasted from social media. In the past, I've fasted from, oh, I'm not going to eat potato chips because for those of you who don't know
Yeah.
me, that's a hard fast because your
Baby.
girl loves herself some potato chips. I've never met a potato chip I didn't like. I will even eat salt and vinegar potato chips in a pinch, and I'm not a big fan. First of all, don't look at me like that, Kasha. That's
I'm
wild.
trying to figure out why that's a
Um,
pinch.
that's the ones that I have to eat in a pinch. Salt and vinegar, the dill flavored. I'll eat them in a pinch though, because they're crunchy and salty. So I'm not gonna hate on them. But going back to what I said, I've given those up, which isn't. I jokingly say it's hard, but it's still it's. Don't buy them. You can avoid them. This was the
Yeah.
first year that I committed to a fast that was it was scary for me because I didn't know that I could do it. Um, and my inspiration was actually our mom because she started doing fasting with her church. And I always, mom has never really like I've always had to fight with her to be good about her food and mom, you need to do this, you need to eat that, you need to da, da, da." And she did this completely on her own, and I didn't even know she was into it until she was into it. And then she was like, "Oh
Same.
yeah, I'm fasting." And she was fasting a lot of hours a day and pulling it off. And I thought, Monique, why is it that you're afraid to do this fast? Because it's going to be hard, and that's why you don't want to do it. But there's been many other things in my life that I've attacked that are hard. Being a cop, running, because running is to me, it's all mental. Being a mom, like all those things are hard. So why am I going to shortchange myself when it comes to this? And with following kind of in her footsteps, I committed to fasting from whatever time I eat dinner at night the night before. I don't eat again until 5 o'clock the next day, essentially, kind of like sunset, essentially, depending on timing and things like that was my idea. And I will say it has not been easy, but I feel like I have been able to achieve what I've been trying to that I wanted to achieve. And it was difficult, but at the same time, it wasn't as hard as I told myself, or the enemy was trying to tell me, "You shouldn't do that. That is so hard. What you gonna do at 3 o'clock when you're hungry?" And I was like, you know what? What I'm gonna do at 3 o'clock is call my mom because she has pushed through this for longer than our fast was shorter than hers. Only did it for 1 week, but it was one of those things that, like, mentally, it really, like, worked on me to be like, "Why are you afraid of this? Like, you just don't wanna do it. Like, that's what it is. You don't wanna be uncomfortable." And I was like, "Fair enough." So I committed to fasting no food, like I said, from dinner time until 5 o'clock the next day. No alcohol, that's not a rough one for me because, yeah, I drink wine maybe once or twice a week, but it's nothing for me to give it up. And then no social media unless it pertains to our podcast. But I've been
Mhm.
very diligent about if I don't really need to look at it even for our podcast, I'm like, I'll look at it later.
Yeah.
And then no games on my phone because I
Mm.
found myself when during downtime, or even sometimes not during downtime, I'm sitting watching a television show, and when it goes to commercial, I turn on a game on my phone, and I'm like, that's insane that you have to be that entertained. So I was like, "That's
Ooh,
gotta
I do the
go."
same.
So I
Mhm.
was like, "That's gotta go." And so, I stuck to those things, and they've all been I have poured into doing the reading for me of the Bible and kinda trying to understand the stories that I've known in the Bible, diving into them a little bit more, researching them. Uh, I'm working right now, so at lunchtime, there's a group of people that go to lunch, and I've had to bow out of going to lunch. And I'll tell you, I did get tested a little bit because I planned like this week, I didn't plan it. Our church picked this week. And I did not account for the fact that the school that I'm working at, every day they've been like, "Oh, it's a half day, so we're delivering food to y'all." I'm like, Okay. We brought y'all Chick-fil-A today." I'm like, "Well, y'all tried me with even God's food. Okay, that's what y'all doing? Okay." I'm like, "Just put it in the refrigerator. I'll get it after 5 o'clock." "Oh, we bought chicken salad chick today." I'm like, "That's awesome. Put it in the refrigerator." I can't. "Uh, Today is the 100th day of school, so we got 8 million different kind of snacks to celebrate the 100th day of school." I'm like, "Cool, Imma pass. Imma pass." With all that being said, though, I have been able to stick to it and really lean into it. And like I said, I attribute it to watching my mom be motivated enough and be focused enough on her spirituality to get through it. She's been doing it for 3 weeks. So I was just
Yeah.
like, whoa, if she can do it for that amount of time, she's older than me. She is like I said, it's one of those things where food is never it's always been like, "Mom, you need to eat healthy, you need to do this, and she's been able to stick with it. So that was my why for doing this podcast, Kasha.
And that's a beautiful why. That's a beautiful why. It's funny because I saw mom today and she's like, "This has been one of the hardest days for me." It's like she's like, "I think it's my mind telling me it's towards the end." So I'm like, it's the end of the month and she's thinking like, "Oh, okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore," and it
Right.
really tested her, but she still stayed true. She
That's
still stayed
awesome.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she started on the 15th, so that's a
Mhm.
long that's a long, really a long time to stay with the fast. Like, she's been not eating from 6 in the morning till 5, and I don't think she's getting up early and eating, like, a breakfast or anything.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. So
So,
it's the same, it's like the night before
same.
until 5. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, when I was doing research, I wanted to know origins of why people started doing things like this. I wanted to understand, where did this come from? And one of the things I looked up is New Year's resolutions go back to over 4,000 years ago. The Babylonians were credited with being the first ones to record New Year's resolutions. They weren't
Mhm.
called resolutions back then, though. They had promises that they made to the gods in order to repay debts and return any kind of borrowed items.
Mm. You be
That
borrowing from the gods?
they did, I
Let me
guess.
let me hold something. Let me hold something.
The- my I only have one God, so my God only offers me salvation. He don't offer me nothing else. So
You don't gotta give it back?
give it back. Thank you. Won't he do it? But they borrowed from the gods, and that was their resolution at the beginning of the year, that we're going to pay our debts and we're going to return the borrowed items. There was also Roman influence that came later on, because the month January was named after the god that this is funny, the two-faced god of beginnings, Janus, and he did beginnings, endings, and transitions. So Romans would make vows again, not to return things, but theirs were to vow to have moral conduct and good behavior for the year. So that
Mm.
was kind of um, that's the history of where it came from, and I guess over time it just kind of evolved. It's To me, I found it interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I find that interesting. I'm always into, like, where did everything start?
Yeah,
I like the anthropological side of it. I was like, "Ooh,
yeah,
what word was that?"
yeah.
But yeah, I just I just feel like, it's weird, like well, you know how I feel about the beginning of the year, but Imma let you go because I know I be
I know. We're gonna talk about that, because that was another thing that when I was thinking about this episode, I was like, we have to talk about that. Which leads me into, how did it transition from that into now? Well,
Mhm,
what happened is, as you have seen, I'm sure, in the world, we have moved from being a much less spiritual and religious world to being a little more secular. And with
mhm,
that, we became more,
mhm,
I'm worried about me. And so it transitioned. More modern practice is to, it shifted from those religious vows more to personal self improvement goals. So today, most of the time, you'll hear people, resolutions are going to be focused on either health, money, productivity, their relationships, doing better, working out, making more money, finding a new job, being more creative. Those are the things that people are focused on more nowadays, because we are a society of people that is wants to talk about me, like that. There's a song years ago that used to say, I want to talk about me, I want to talk about I. So that's where it's moved to. Um, this is where this kind of tied into what you said to me one time, since the new year, we were talking about it one day on the phone, and you told me your viewpoint on when the new year truly starts. So please share with me about that.
I wanna go on record and say I do not subscribe to the Gregorian calendar. Um, I adhere to it because the rest of society does now, but, I'm thinking about, like, how our brother calls me so apothecarian and everything. That's my apothecarian side. Um, but yeah, I feel like the earth tells us I know I'm gonna sound hokey pokey. The earth lets us know when the beginning of the
No.
year is, and it's not now,
Pause for a
okay?
second. You guys are about to get a glimpse of the butterfly that I know. Go ahead.
Oh, that's why I gave birth to a butterfly.
And love.
Um, so I feel like the earth lets us know when the beginning of the year is by changing the season for growth, and that's spring. okay? And it's not just me. It's not just me. Like that was a common practice until they started deciding how the calendars were going to go. Which that's a whole nother conversation. But point of it is, spring is the beginning of the year. That's when things start. Right now is a time for just reflection. It goes along with what you were saying earlier. Is like I feel like the year mimics a lifetime or a day, if you will. You start off as a baby, spring. You are a younger child, summer, and you're a young adult. And then you are more set in your ways. You know who you are. You're an older adult, autumn. And then you're very old and you die, winter. Same thing for a day, morning. You know what I mean? You could look at it that way. Morning, that's spring. Then, the day is running, that's summer. It's evening time, 5 o'clock, you're settled. That's autumn. And then it's nighttime, winter. That's how I think of all of it. So for me, I respect, and you know what I love? Because honestly, I feel like this goes against our natural way because we like the winter time it's telling us on every angle to relax and chill out. But I really do respect, like no joke, I respect what you and mom are doing because it really is a real test of will at that point. Because to me, I feel like your body's screaming to you, relax. You don't have to do this. Chill out. But you're like, that's mind over matter in another way. So I really respect that. I respect people who say, I'm going to lose weight in the beginning of the year and they mean that, or, January and mean that. And do that, like, and stick to their New Year's resolutions. But I can understand why it's hard, actually. It's because this time of the year, and even like, I mean, where we are, it's not even like the coldest place in the world. It's just, it feels like, because it gets cold for us, like this are cold.
It feels
Like
like the coldest place in the world right now.
other people are snowing. I don't know what that's about. What is that? I don't speak any of that. What language is that?
Here's the
Um,
thing though, because right now, Florida is not Floridaing right now. Florida is New Yorking. We're supposed to be on Saturday at 22 degrees at my house. Right. I am appalled. I had to clutch
looking
my
for some
pearls
pearls.
when Frank told me that, I was like, oh, great. I was like,
I'm
well,
not.
we just have to stay home because this is dangerous.
So you see what I'm saying? You see why
Right.
this is like everything around us is screaming, chill out, relax. See what I'm saying? And you are making choices that are really attesting your wills. And I mean, pat on the back. Like I said at work, I work with little children, pat on the back. Okay, good job. Because baby. But yeah, that's my own personal little, I don't know, apothecarian free hippie wild child belief. So, but power to you. And I am. I am like cheering you on along the whole way.
So, first of all, let me comment on the fact that I love the fact that you say autumn. That's so formal and not fall. I kept waiting for you to switch, and I was like, oh, she says autumn. I never knew this about her.
Hmm. I think I stay
Secondly,
fall
um,
normally.
well, you were very fancy today. Guys, pinkies up. It's autumn. um, the thing too is, so when you say, like, for you, you feel like that the spring comes anew, and that's the beginning of the year for you. So during this time, well, I have two questions. One, do you think they started nestling New Year's or created the calendar like they are because it was easier for the world to roll right from Christmas into that New Year celebration and not have to space things out?
I'm not exactly sure about that, but what I do know is that the calendar changed. And like I said, that's why I said this is a whole nother conversation. Because if you notice, September, what does sept mean, Monique?
I, Gosh, you're gonna put me on the spot, made me look dumb. I don't know.
7.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, it does mean 7, but it's the ninth month.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
October. What does that oct mean? 8.
means 8.
November, no
November
means
means
9,
9,
and December means
and
10.
this
So
means 10.
those were not the way that the calendar was supposed to be. They shifted and moved these dates around, and I think they added, um I gotta find out who what they added, but I think it's like August and something else. But yeah, the calendar has been shifted. The other thing is, you see what I'm saying? I'm gonna get into my little flipsy dipsy side.
Let's
You
talk about
know,
it.
the moon phases are 28-day cycles. It doesn't really add up in the way that they're doing things. So I'm just not subscribing to that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like they shifted things, not necessarily to do with holidays, but I believe it was because
Okay.
it's the Gregorian calendar. And I remember, I gotta find out what that is. But, anyways, there was actually a battle of calendars. There was one year that went on for like 600 days because they couldn't agree on which
I
calendar to go
remember
on.
that. I remember
Yeah.
hearing something about
So
that.
then
Yeah.
we settled on this one. And so, yeah, we're just all mixed up. I don't, that's why I say, that's what we decided on. Technically, you want to know something interesting? Um,
Tell me.
Ethiopia is on a whole different calendar. I want to say they're in the year, I'm going to look this up because I can't even, let this one go by because
Ethiopia's on a
they
different
have a
count. Like
whole,
currently?
currently today, baby, today they in a different year.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
I'm so interested now. So
Yeah. I was like, I have to
while
look
you're
this one
looking
up.
that up, while you're looking that up, I find that to be very interesting. I'm gonna throw another question at you while you're looking that up. So for you, you ring in the new year, and do you? Oh, you found it?
Yeah. Um, Ethiopia is in the year 2018.
Now I have so many questions. So when you go to Ethiopia, do they have that as the date when you sign stuff and do stuff?
Yeah, that's their date. They have a 13-month calendar.
So they don't even celebrate the new year with the rest of the world.
No, no, that's interesting.
I'm
Huh.
so interested. Now I want to go to
Yeah,
Ethiopia for New Year's one day.
yeah. I'll be like, we're in the past, guys. What's happening? They're like, we're in the same
You
year
know
as you. We
what?
just don't.
I'm going to book it as a back in time trip.
They're gonna be mad at you. Be like, girl, we're here in the same time. We just don't call it that.
So taking me back to my question now for you, because now, man, I have so many questions. We're going to have to look that up and talk some more. You celebrate the new year like everybody else. I know that. But do you make resolutions or do you wait until that springtime where you feel like it's time for a new?
This is the first year that I really wanted to go with my natural instinct, and I decided that instead of New Year's resolutions, I was going to declare subtle changes. So, with that being said, there are some things that I'm slowly changing about myself, and in hopes that when the springtime comes, um, that I will be fully rolling in it and expecting myself to just get into it that more. So I'm making subtle changes now that I want to see, you know, but they're slow changes on a day-to-day basis. And I want to see myself be in full force or beginning to, um, you know, start being in full force in springtime.
But see, that was the other thing. Like when you said that to me on the phone, I thought, what an interesting conversation. And I have so many questions for her, but I wanted to hold them to the podcast so that I would hear I'd be genuinely like spawned into other questions like this. Now I have so many questions
Yeah,
about going to Ethiopia. Now we're going to have to plan that trip to
we
go
gotta
back in
go.
time and all.
You're like,
All right.
you're just dumb.
You're just an idiot, lady. So, um, that goes, like I said, it kind of goes along with showing the evolution of resolution. But the other part of this, and we talked about it a little bit, why I thought about doing this was fasting. And I wanted to dig into because I feel like fasting and resolutions and all those ideals. Fasting is not an ideal. Let me say that. But the ideal of new year, new me resolutions, fasting, doing something different than you've done the previous year is all happening for people in January a lot of times, except for Kasha, because she
Mhm.
um, likes to celebrate in the spring. I'm just messing with you. You know, sidebar, before we move past that, until you said that to me, it had never crossed my mind. But when you said that to me, I'm like, what she says makes a lot of sense. Like, wintertime is when everything dies. And in order to get new stuff, you do have to have that period of like death and the earth being overturned, and those kind of things do have to happen. But it does make sense that the new day would rise with the sunrise and with new growth and with all of the things. Like, farmers are not farming right now. That, yes, you can say, well, we have cold weather, cold tolerant but the abundance that occurs, it occurs in the springtime going into the summer. And then, like you said, the summer starts to taper off because summer gets so hot. It's almost like that young vibrancy is hitting its peak and then drops off into fall, and you start getting a little cool. You can still grow things necessarily, but it's not going to be, you go from that abundance in spring to the slowly tapering off of summer, the more tapering off of fall, because you can only grow, you know, certain things in the fall, to again the death period of the winter. And when you said that to me, I was like, wow, that is super interesting to think. That makes more sense to our bodies, to our internal clocks, because people, this is where you might see a little butterfly in me. People, we are tied to everything in this earth. The tides, the moon, all those things affect us. And I say that from the perspective of being a cop for 17 years. When full moons were out, people were insane. It was fully crazy. So we have to recognize that we are affected by everything like that. So if we are on an off cycle, I wonder what that means for our bodies.
Mhm. Mhm.
I found that very interesting. That's why I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to kind of give some credence to that, because I was poking fun at you, but I definitely did find it to be very interesting. And I thought, that girl is pretty smart. I'm not going to lie. So,
Thank you.
getting into it a little bit more, I wanted to talk about where fasting came from and its religious roots. Obviously, fasting was very, very heavily ingrained with religion. It was back in ancient times. It was a spiritual discipline, and it's practiced across various religions. Obviously, Christianity practices it, but so does Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. They all practice fasting because the purpose behind it is repentance for things that you have done wrong. It's sometime in some religions, it's mourning. And the big one, and I will say this is the one that really resonated with me, was spiritual clarity and dependence on God over physical comfort. And like I told
Mhm.
you earlier, my big thing for being like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, not eating all day until 5 o'clock. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm gonna be hungry at like 2. What am I gonna do when all the kids go to lunch and I'm just sitting there, like all these things that the evil was trying to tell me, like, you can't do it. Don't do it. Don't even try. Just go ahead and eat what you want to eat. Don't even listen to him.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
you have to realize that is that side of us, that human flesh that does not want to adhere to being dependent on God over our physical comfort and having that spiritual clarity. And it comes via our brain. And like, this is another thing I wanted you to tell a little bit about, because you said to me recently about how the brain is a powerful tool, but how it can, trying to remember the word you used. Help me out, Kasha. Tell me what it was that you said that day. You know what I'm talking about.
I said the brain is a tool, and I didn't mean that as a compliment.
That's what it was.
I said that the brain
Explain
is
a
a
little
tool
bit
in an
more.
insulting way. So, to me, I'm saying, like, the brain is flesh, and it is just like anything else in the body, and it's strangely tries to preserve an easier thought process, even if that is to the body's detriment and to its own detriment. It will still go towards the easiest process, no matter what. So, of course, when you're going to try to create a new path and say, hey, we should think this way, your brain's like, oh no, that's a hard way to think. That's too difficult. We have to create new. pathways to that area, and we don't wanna do that. Let's go to do the thing we're used to doing. Like, so
It's
and
so true,
to
though,
its
and
detriment. Yeah.
yeah, and it's everything. It's not just you can take food out of it, put in we're teasing that we're gonna be doing an episode soon about love and relationships. Even in love, your brain will tell you, "Ain't you bored in this relationship? Ain't it time for you to go find something new to do?" And when
Mhm.
all the while it's like, no, you water the grass that you are in and it will grow. Don't be always looking over the
Mhm.
fence at that grass. That dude over there, he treats his woman real nice. I bet you he would treat you nice. I mean, like the brain just it has all these things that it'll say and do. And if you're foolish enough to just follow it blindly, it'll be a tool to you and not in a good way.
In a good way.
So I just thought it was like for me, those are definitely the things when it came for my purpose for fasting. I didn't not the repentance and mourning. I think that there's still even in today in the religious sect there is some repentance to fasting. The mourning, I haven't really had seen. I don't have a lot of preachings on or heard a lot of preachings about that, but I'd be interested now to kind of dive into um, the purpose of mourning. You have something?
Yeah, I mean, that is something when, I heard you say about mourning, like, I've heard it in a lot of other ways where you're like, you're repenting, you're having that clarity, you're building that connection with God. But mourning is something interesting, and it honestly makes me it's like not like a really true grief, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying like we just because the rest of us eat, like we not grieving,
Right.
but like to grieve and say, I'm not even gonna eat through this process. And honestly, it might be a very honest way of dealing with mourning and dealing with grief because you don't have when it comes to fasting, and if you ever fasted before, that they're like it's like somebody dialed down the volume a little bit. Yes,
Mhm.
you're gonna feel hungry, and that's the thing that you have to fight with most, but, like, mentally and, like, spiritually, there's, like, this little like, it slows down, and it's more silent, so you're probably mourning in a way that is very honest, like, you're not trying to cover it up, you're not trying to hide from it, you're there in it, like,
Yeah.
so that is a very interesting I would love to know more about that because,
Yeah.
and like you say, teasing, but in the future, I wanna discuss grief, and so
Yeah.
I wanna get back into that, like, I'm was a mental
Yeah.
note to get back
Y
into, fasting and in a period of mourning and what
I
that
think
means.
I read somewhere or I watched a history show or something, there is a certain cultures that they won't eat until after the body has been buried or interned in whatever their cultures. I think, I would have to do some more research on it, but I think you would be right, like and it might even be, in my opinion, more therapeutic for you because you're going to, like you said, that clarity of turning down the volume because that truly does happen. I That has been an unexpected thing, because I've told you my brain ain't loud anyways, but it's really been quiet the last couple days, and I've been able to be really focused, and that was something I thought that was another one of the, like, "You're not gonna be able to focus. How you gonna be able to do this? How you gonna be able to teach? How you gonna be able to do" and I feel like I have done better because there isn't any noise kind of going on. I'm like, "Okay, I got this time," and I've been using the time where I would be eating to read my Bible, to find verses in the Bible that are resonating with me. There was a verse in Hebrews, I think it was Hebrews 12:1, and I don't want to misquote that, so give me just a second. Hebrews, it was like I want to say Hebrews 12:1, but basically it was talking about how when you're doing something difficult to trust in God and run your race. And
Mm.
yep, it is. It was Hebrews 12:1, and it urges believers to run their faith journey with endurance. And that was I don't read Hebrews normally, but this fast kind of got me into diving into verses and things like that that I never would have. So I think that maybe if you did fast for morning, you might have an opportunity to really kind of allow your body, your heart, your mind, your spirit to connect with that sadness and then be able to subsequently let it go a little bit easier. Yeah. Um Talking about, like, the way it came about again, there's a lot of, in the Bible, obviously, there's a lot of biblical and religious examples. Moses fasted, Jesus fasted for 40 days in the desert, and while he was in there, the serpent came and was like, "Hey, can't you turn water into wine? Can't you turn these rocks into bread? I mean, why you just sitting around here not eating?" When you look at stuff like that, it's like, okay. Esther, Daniel, those are just some of the other ones, but like I told you, there's many religions that practice fasting. They have Ramadan in Islam that they will practice fasting. Yom Kippur in Judaism, they practice fasting. So it's very interesting. I thought when I started fasting, this was one thing that kind of came to mind for me. And I wanted to bounce the question off of you because I feel like fasting is also it's a counter cultural act now. It wasn't always. And the reason I say that is because choosing restraint now or choosing restraint back in ancient times, I feel like, not to say it was easier, but things were scarce. Like you could choose restraint because you didn't have a refrigerator full of food. You had to go out and hunt. And so you could be like, okay, I'm not going to hunt for 7 days. Well, that means you're not going to eat because you ain't got no food, you know, or I'm not going to do whatever, that kind of thing. But we live in a culture of abundance. We live in a culture of, I can call DoorDash, I can call Uber Eats, um, what's the supermarket that'll deliver your groceries for you? I can
Instacart.
call Instacart. I can call, there is, nowadays there was somebody that I just heard on the TV that started delivering and I was like, what? Um, you can get food, you can get stuff from Amazon. Like there is no limits really to what we can access very quickly. So I feel like now in this culture that we have now, that fasting has become a counter cultural act to choose restraint in times of abundance. What do you think?
Mhm. So, I didn't think about the fact of, like, how it's another challenge for now. I didn't think about how difficult it would be in this time of abundance. Like, even though they kinda try to scare us all the time where they're like, "Oh, things are scarce," like, they're not near as scarce as what it was back in the day, and I mean
Yeah.
way back in the day,
Yeah.
before refrigeration. Um, and I think that it's interesting because like, I wouldn't say it's easier, but if
Mhm.
you know that everybody is kinda in the same boat with you, like, we all not eating, it's a little
Right.
different than to see others eat food and, kinda watch them and be like, "Okay," or
Yay.
see others indulge in things that you said you were not gonna indulge in,
Right.
and like you had mentioned earlier, there's, like, so many, um, distractions and so many things that you could fast from. The world doesn't stop for you. Wh which, I do kinda find it interesting. I've worked with a lot of different types of people in different religions and cultures and stuff. Um, and I always appreciated the dedication of, the Islam, how they have Ramadan, like, and I think it's kind of a cool thing because they kinda are all doing it together, but they do work in a situation where, I guess, like, it's like a secular situation where we're all over here eating or we're not the same religion as them, so we're not
Right.
really participating, and they have to, deal with that, and, you know, so I didn't even think about that where it's like that's another layer to it where it's
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna be eating this thing and then you have to watch the world eat and there's so many restaurants as you're driving home and or I'm not gonna be doing social media and even if you're doing something else, everybody's trying to send you stuff from social media and things. So it's interesting where it's like
Yeah.
every angle. Like, I'm not gonna drink alcohol, and on one thing, there's triggers to drink alcohol where you're like, "I just wanna relax," or,
Yeah.
social settings might put you in the position. So, having that abundance and having the ability to be tested so in so many angles is another layer to it. And, I've seen people who are like, "Yeah, I had to be in my prayer to get through this."
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very true because, like you said, I think definitely easier when there's other people doing it with you. My church is doing a corporate fast. So we are, as a whole church, everyone is fasting, but we're not around each other. I don't. I don't work with them. They don't work with me. Our pastor is each morning sending out a video of encouragement, which I have found very
Mhm.
useful, and giving us
That's good.
verses and things like that um, to reference during the day. And that has definitely been helpful and useful. But the world goes on. And I think that is truly the test that, like, you do have to know how to do this without the world stopping.
Mhm.
I've actually been a bit thankful that I am in school with kids who they don't care. They're like, you can be fasting all you want to, lady. I'm gonna show you all these things that I'm eating right now. And in fact, can you help me open up all the snacks that I brought today? Because I need you to help me. And so when you open up the apples smell totally different when you've been fasting. You know, can you open up these Cheetos for me? And they come to you with Cheeto fingers. Um, these Cheetos are so good, Miss. I'm like, "Ugh, that's so nice, honey. Go sit down." But at the same time, I've also felt like that has been a reminder to me that, like, I can do things that are difficult with leaning into my prayer, leaning into my Bible, leaning into my spirituality. I don't have to just say, well, if I physically don't think I can do it, it can't be done. We are spiritual beings, and there are so much more that keep us driven. So, and I will say, while it has been hard in one breath, on the other side, it has not been hard. So, in the respect of in my brain, the idea of fasting all these hours was going to be insurmountable. And it has
Mm.
proved the first day was hard. The second day was a little harder because for some, I think I made a mistake. When I came home and broke my fast, I ate lettuce, a lot of lettuce, and then I ate these protein chips. That was probably not a good choice because it had I think, a lot of things in it that didn't marry well with my tummy. So that wasn't good. So then I had to rethink what I would break my fast with. I have stuck with breaking with vegetables, and that is to your credit because when I had told you one day what I had broke with, and you're like, good job, that's what you're supposed to break with. And I've tried to break with eating some kind of vegetable and not saying I'm abstaining from the carbs because I feel like I do need them after all day of not going without some. But I have been trying to make sure that I'm breaking with something that's not crazy. Like I'm not breaking with a chocolate chip cookie. No,
Mm-mm.
not doing that. I'm
Mm-mm.
breaking with proteins. But I'm breaking now with real proteins, meats, those kind of things. So, um, I just thought it was interesting. And I think when it comes to living in the society that we are in now, where we have such an abundance, that there have been different ways that the fasting has been implemented because we do have such an abundance across the board, and so it's not just eating fast. Some churches do like Daniel fast, where it's just fruits and vegetables, no meats. I will say for me, I think it is wonderful for people if that's their way of fasting and that gets them their connection. I think it's great. For me, I don't think it would be a fair fast for me, and what I mean by that is I can eat fruits and vegetables. I'd be like, this ain't no big deal. So, I know you would be the same.
It's no problem. I know that, people assume because I have a little heftiness to me that I'm like, "Oh, you're eating all the meats and stuff." I'm like, "I love me a vegetable." I don't know what you mean.
Mm-mm.
Like, I love vegetables. I love savory items over sweet. Like, what do you mean?
Yes.
Um, and it's funny because I do say I'm non-religious, but it doesn't mean I'm not spiritual. But I do believe that in the times, like I did a couple years and it changed after I had a baby, but I did a couple years of eating, I guess, in the Daniel's fast way where I was eating raw fruits and vegetables in the daytime and at night I would eat cooked food. That was to me the most spiritually sound I had ever been and the most um peaceful I think I had ever been. So, I do see that, like you said, it would be easier, but I do see how, it could be, a fast in its own way, right? And
Yeah,
especially
for
for people,
sure.
like you said, who struggle with staying away from carbs and staying away from meats and things like that. So it really, I do think it does its job, but yeah, for me it'd
100%.
be easy work, baby.
Yeah.
Easy work.
But I think it for those people, if that is the way you need to fast to connect, I think so what happens sometimes is people go, "Well, I'm not really fasting." Yes, you are. If you're giving up anything that would be a struggle for you, and it does, as a result, create that spiritual clarity, create that dependence on God instead of what you were depending on before. It can be anything. Now, like I said, Daniel fast is some of the things that churches do, but they also social media fast, entertainment or habit fasting. One of the ladies at our church spoke about her fast was cigarettes because for years she had smoked
Mm,
cigarettes and could not break she could not get over the hump and quit. And so when our
mm,
corporate fast that we do at our church, which I think, sidebar, that's something that a lot of churches will do, is the corporate fasting. And I think that lends to what like the Islamic people will do, where everybody's doing it together. And I think it definitely creates a community and makes it easier if you feel like we're all going through it. I know for me in this instance, even though we're not all, but like just knowing that mom's doing this with me, it has really helped to motivate me to keep me going. But she said during our corporate fast 2 years ago, she could not quit smoking. And so she decided, I'm going to fast cigarettes. And she said, leading up to it, I prayed. I did all these things to like set myself up. I didn't buy any more packs of cigarettes. And I was down to like my last 2 packs. And she's like, the funny part is like the day before the fast, I went out to smoke a cigarette. And remember, she goes, I put it out because I was like, ew, this cigarette tastes bad. And she said, and all the while I had been praying, God, make it so that I don't want to do this anymore. And she said, now it's been 2 years, over 2 years that she's been fasting. She says, I'm fasting from cigarettes still every day. And I'm like,
mm.
that is no less of a fast than the person who doesn't eat for 7 days. Because I know, and anybody, I've never smoked, but I know that it is when you have a habit of any kind, smoking, drinking, whatever it is, it can be as difficult as not eating to stop doing it. So I just feel like, and I wanted to go on record with saying, like, if you're doing a Daniel's fast, if you're doing a habit fast, if you're fasting from social media because you feel like it's become such a distraction, those are still just as eloquent of fasts as the ones that were from ancient times of not eating. I think that is the fast that they had back then because that was the hardest thing for people back then was food and basic necessities, essentially. You think?
Mm-hmm. And I going to piggyback on what you were saying about like people who have addictions. I feel like if you can have empathy for them in any way, you would understand like how the fasting, how you staying away from something even as simple as social media, but as as ingrained in your life as food, you would understand that someone who struggles with that. And I think about that. I've done a fast before that was just it was like a couple days. Um and it was just drinking and everything like that, but it was no
Mhm.
food for a couple days.
Ooh.
Um but yeah, which I plan to try to get to again,
Mhm.
but I thought about that in that moment where I was like, wow, imagine somebody who feels it almost like a physical reaction towards something that they know is bad for them, which I
Yeah.
know food can be good for you, but food can be bad for you
Food
too.
can be bad too. Yep.
Um, yeah, so and especially sometimes the ones we crave the most are the ones that are like
The
horrible. So
worst.
you could understand why somebody and how somebody is going through something like that. So definitely built my empathy towards those type of people in that way, and not that, you should be like, oh, it's fine, but it's a way to, feel like, you know, kind of I know what you're going through kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, and we talked about like in ancient times, what was the purpose behind fasting? I don't think that has changed that much. I think now the purpose for fasting is still reordering your desires. It's still the same thing, building that spiritual discipline. And the big thing I think for our society that comes out of fasting that is a necessity is creating space for that prayer and reflection time to be able to look at yourself and look inward because we again have such an abundant society for everything, for distractions. Our society is overrun with different things to distract you. Oh, you don't have anything to do? Open up your phone. I can send you an app for that. I mean, there's so many distractions that we don't have space that's created unless you are intentional about it for you to do things like even sitting down and reading a book or having a conversation with your children or your spouse, or like you have to be intentional in this world. And I think that when you do fast, it does create space for that kind of the prayer, the spiritual connection, and for that reflection to say, what can I make room for in my life if I eliminate some of these things that aren't necessary? Not to say food's necessary, but we can look at our lives and find things from using the reflection of fasting for food and things like that to say, this part of my life here, I can eliminate that so that I can make room for other things. And it also makes us have to ask ourselves the question, how do we practice self-denial? How are we practicing self-denial in this world of instant gratification?
Mm. I think about the fact that, I don't know, I think our society is kind of built on needing gratification because there's some built-in self-denial, if that makes sense. Like you have to work for a certain amount of time. You know what I'm saying? You have to get up. You have so many obligations, especially at a certain point in your life or depending on your responsibilities or being a parent, being a bill payer of any type. Owning a home. There's so many things, there's so many have tos that it's built in to have these unhealthy instant gratification moments. But they feel like you have to, like there's an authority over you looming over you at all times to say you better pay your bills or you better go to work or you better do this thing. So to put yourself in a position where you're the authority on that I think is really difficult. I think that's a whole different ball game because you know that there's nobody going to be like, hey, if you do eat that candy bar, nobody's going to whoop your behind. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
you're not going to have to pay a fine,
Yeah.
but it is something when you have to be the looming authority over, this situation. And, on a spiritual sense, and depending on what you believe, you have a higher power to answer to if you don't, and
Yeah.
and saying, "Hey, I broke a promise to
Yeah.
the highest." Ooh.
Yeah. So, moving into more modern times, we have the new year, new me. And where did that come from? It's definitely more modern cultural phrase that came about more so than the ancient ones we've been talking about. But it's still rooted in a lot of the same things. It's rooted in self-help um, movements. It's rooted in fitness and diet and culture. And the thing when I was looking it up that I found very interesting, and I was like, oh, I can see where this came from. It's rooted in social media and marketing. New Year, New Me makes it really easy to sell products when you can say, hey, let's have a fresh start and start using this lotion. Let's have a fresh start and start using this shampoo. Let's do a New Year, New Me for this vitamin. And I was like, oh man, I bet that's where that came from. What do you think?
That's interesting, man. It all goes back to the money, like always.
Yes, it does.
Like somebody was like, "That gonna make some money. Let's go and tell them this." I think,
Yeah.
well, honestly, this is a whole nother conversation, but a lot of our lifestyles and the way that we think is original, and it has a lot to do with marketing.
Hmm.
And pairing with that instant gratification, like you were saying, like we are, I mean, just advertised to at the highest rate I think we have ever been advertised to. It's not a
100%.
billboard anymore or a commercial after like 10 minutes of watching a show. It is everywhere. It is on your
Everywhere.
phone. It's in your hand. It's constant. You can't even, like, we used to have streaming services that didn't have commercials and then they were
Not
like,
no more.
just kidding. We got it again. But it's everywhere. So going back to that is that, it pairs with what I was saying earlier about, like, we are always looking for, like, well, you know what? I'll straighten up at this date. I'll straighten it up. I'll be better after the turn of the year. Sometimes we even say, like, the thing me and my best friend say is Monday. We always say Monday. Oh,
Mm.
Monday, everything gonna change.
Everything's
We
gonna
gonna
be
be better
okay
on
on
Monday.
it'll be different on Monday.
So January is Monday, you know what I'm saying, of the
January is
year.
Monday.
So
And
I
that kinda
think
goes
that
go ahead.
yeah, no, I think that that's what it is. They were like, "Well, how can we make money?" Let's just say that.
Yeah,
New
they
year, new me.
did, and what you were saying, I was gonna say is that appeals just like you said, we'll do that on Monday, the psychology of the fresh start. That is the appeal of the new year, new me. Oh, you wanna have a fresh start with your hair? Let me use this. You wanna have a fresh start with your face? Let me show you some lotion. Um, and not only does it give dive into the psychology of the fresh start, it also allows you to separate yourself from anything that you did before. Because now I'm new. That was the old me that did that. That wasn't me. That was the old me. So the psychology of those two things working in tandem make it very easy to appeal to you with marketing and those kind of things. But there is a downside. And when I was looking this up, one of the downsides to people having this ideal of new year, new me, and I wanted your idea on this, is it promotes an identity change without putting in some real sustainable work or plans to actually make the change. Just saying it doesn't change who you are. You can't just say, "All right, I'm a new person. That's the old me, shedding that old me and I'm doing new stuff," if you don't have sustainable systems put in place. And it creates a place where you are now pressured to reinvent yourself instead of just refining who you are and being okay with
Mm,
Monique is a unique individual who is different than Kasha. Yes, Kasha is a beautiful butterfly, and I find her to be incredibly intriguing. And I think that, like I've said before, anybody who don't like Kasha is crazy. But I don't need to reinvent myself to be Kasha. I can refine Monique every day and be a better version of myself. But New Year, New Me doesn't give room for that. It says change who you are right now and good luck with that without having, like I said, I don't think you don't have sustainable plans in place a lot of times when you create this pressure for yourself to reinvent yourself. What do you think?
hmm. It makes me think that, like, I don't know where, like, I guess the depth of that would come from, but it makes me think of, like, when you take a shower, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get in there and then you come out clean. It was like 20 minutes and it's done, you know? So I think people are looking for that way to just be like, I'm done." Like, you know what I'm saying? That's shed, which it's interesting because I do think you're not tied to your past, but I also think that you should integrate who you were with who you are now, or in who you're gonna be. I think that, like, you're a summation of all that. So yeah, I feel like we're
Yeah.
looking for, especially when you get tired of yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get tired of yourself sometimes. Tired of your decisions, tired of your eating habits. You know what I'm saying? So you're just like, okay, what if I just shed the person I am right now, so I can just come out clean. So, that's what I think.
And I think that's probably the why behind it. I just don't know. And you can do some um serious refinement, but I think you have to be careful about not thinking that there's parts of you that you can keep. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater a lot of times. And even with the mistakes that you have made, they have created you, to be who you are. And it's like it says in the Bible, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That doesn't stop in the womb in our mom's belly. That doesn't stop then. We are still continuing to be fearfully and wonderfully made if we give ourselves the opportunity. And I think with just saying, I'm scrapping the old me and creating a whole new person, doesn't really leave room for that sometimes. So there has to be new year, new me has to be a refined year. New year, refined me is what I think would be better.
Like how you were saying too about, like, the, sustainable systems in place. Because I think that's the other thing too, is like a lot of times we want to be this new person without a plan. Like, you can't just get to Los Angeles from New York. You have to get on a plane first. You have to drive there, whatever you have to do, but you're
Yes.
not going to just appear, you know? So I think sometimes too, we have to figure out the path. Like, I do want to lose weight, but what is my first step? I do want to, you know, be more disciplined, but what am I going to do first? What's the first habit? Really quickly, I know, this book that my best friend read, and I do not know the book because I didn't read it, but it's by Stephen Guise, I believe. It's Guise. He wrote the book Many Habits, and I
Okay.
think he has like a lot of series of it. And I find it interesting because I feel like well, how she explained it to me, like that he talks about a pathway basically. Like many habits is like, hey, I'm going to, start being exercising, but first, let me just make a promise that I'll walk to the mailbox every day. You know, yes, I'm going to start eating healthier, but let me just make a promise that every day I'm going to put an almond in my mouth at least once. So, and so you can then build on it. So even when you drop down and say, oh man, it was cold today and I didn't go for my run because I've built my mini habit all the way up to a run, but I still could just walk to the mailbox and I accomplished something. And it's building that consistency and that habit more than it is saying like, which is the biggest thing is discipline. Motivation is trash, but it's building
Yeah.
that discipline of saying, I'm going to do it every day, at some level. It may be the low level, but I'm
Yeah.
going to do it every day. And
Yeah.
eventually that mini habit will turn to a grand habit that you will view as a mini habit because you're like, oh, it's easy for a 1 mile run? So,
Yeah, that's so true when you look at, and that leads into what the next part we were going to talk about is when changes, when resolutions, when you're fast, when they're typically abandoned. And I think you hitting on that part of it is a lot of the reason people abandon it. They make, instead of doing a mini habit, they make a major change, and it's hard. And when I was looking it up, looking at this, like I told you, motivation peaks in the very beginning of January for everybody, usually. Oh, it's like I said, new year, new me. The sun is rising again. It's Monday. We about to get good again. All those things. But believe it or not, the drop off begins within the first 2 to 3 weeks. They
mm,
literally say that most people completely abandon their resolution by mid January. And the second Friday in January is called Quitter's Day. I had no idea. And
how
the
do you
reason is
celebrate
just like
that?
what you just said. I don't know. I'm done. The reason is just what you said. People create resolutions that are too vague. They are too extreme. They are based on emotion and not structure, and they lack accountability. So having something where you have a mini habit is very doable. That's how you can stay on course. It creates a space where you shift your mind from thinking it's all or nothing. I got to either run 5 miles or I'm not going to do nothing. Well, no, you can walk to the mailbox, and that can be enough. And walking to the mailbox is something that you can consistently do, and it's sustainable. So you're creating more practical ways of accomplishing your goals without making what it is that you're doing too big to overcome, essentially. And
Mhm,
to lend to what you said about motivation is trash is right. Building habits is what you want to do when you're doing these resolutions, not goals. Build a habit in your life, and make sure that you remind yourself that starting small should still feel impressive. If you're doing something that you haven't been doing before, you should still be impressed by doing it every day. And so you're going to, if you do that, then you'll attach some identity to your resolutions and not just words. You'll say, I am becoming someone who walks to the mailbox every single day. I am becoming someone who has an almond every day because I'm trying to be healthier. You're building that habit into it, and it makes more sense. And it, along with those things, it just, I think when you put all those things together, you give yourself a little bit of uh, you know, give yourself some of the pat on the back almost of saying you're starting something small, but this is impressive. It will allow you to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and go, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. What are your thoughts?
yeah, I totally agree, and I mean, I it makes me think too because I struggle with the all or nothing, which, like I said, like my best friend put me on that book, and I probably need to read Many Habits. Um, but the thing of it is, I struggle with the all or nothing, and I had negative self talk that I struggled with for quite a while too. So it was like, you know. that type of like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, see, you blew it again," you know? So, I think and that's why I'm thinking, like, too, like I said, my winter time, I'm taking this in as a time of, like, reflecting on who I wanna be, who I was, and what can I build right now. And so, yeah, that's why I say I'm doing those little steps to become what I wanna be, later on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I really struggle with the all or nothing thing. I really, you know, it, it, it just, that kind of thing where it's like, oh, I would love to be on the other side of this,
Right.
it's hard. Yeah.
It's very hard. I think it's hard for anybody because, and even if you, like for me, prior to having my son, I used to run 5, 7 miles, no big deal. Then I had him and I was getting back to it and then I got hurt and it took me out of running for a number of years. And now I have to remind myself, don't get frustrated because you can't just jump back into 5 or 7 miles. Because for a while, once I did start to feel better, I would get frustrated because I'm like, I want to be able to just be on just like you said, on the other side of this. I want to be back to running 5 or 7 miles. My body should remember this. It's not that my body forgot. My body just isn't still in the shape. And so I've got to create consistent, sustainable, smaller goals. And that way, and they are becoming more impressive. I've gone from, no, I'm not running 5 or 7 miles yet, but I'm walking 3 miles 3 days a week. I'm doing other workouts with my clock it. I'm doing, lifting workouts actually with my son. I'm doing lifting workouts with him that are, like HIIT type workouts, and then I do a fun workout for myself on Saturday. That is allowing me to create small, sustainable goals. I'm not working out for more than an hour. I'm giving myself the grace to not be where I was and at the same time building a habit, not being like, I need to get to 5 miles, not that goal. So it's great. And the other thing I'm doing is sharing with people and saying, like, this is what I am doing now because this is where I used to be and I want to get back there. And it almost is creating a little accountability for me because when you say it to people, it makes it real, I feel like. So making my commitment more public versus private is for me, it creates accountability and it allows me to create my own little community of people who are like, hey, how's that going? That to me is a
Mhm.
motivator. So, and I think
Mhm.
that's accountability is another way that people can give themselves the ability to stay the course with these resolutions, with the changes that you want to bring in for your new year, whenever it might occur, but making sure that you remind yourself too the grace part of it comes with the creating these goals. Give yourself grace, give yourself flexibility, measure your progress versus your perfection. How is it going versus are you perfect? We do that to ourselves as a people in general. And sometimes it's like you said earlier, see, you didn't work out today. You missed a day, so you failed. No. What progress did you make though? You weren't perfect, but what progress did you make? And I think creating, especially when we're talking about the fasting part of it too, creating the fact of don't give yourself the pressure of I have to fast. Instead, lean on the fact that I'm going to pray, not I have to do something. I'm going to do this and um, I'm going to be more direct and deliberate with what I'm doing rather than trying to force myself that you need to be disciplined and putting all those negative connotations.
Agreed.
Yeah. So when it comes to kind of being able to stick to what you're doing, I think when you put all those things together, give yourself grace. I'm talking to you right now, Kasha. Give yourself grace to miss a day. Give yourself grace to have progress and not being perfect. And when you're not perfect, the other thing is share it with people. I didn't do it today, so they can motivate you through that mental. Sometimes your brain will talk to you for those that have that struggle with maybe self-doubt and talking negatively to themselves. I always say to Kasha when she tells me that she's talking nasty to herself, I was like, nobody is going to talk to my sister like that, so you better tell them to stop.
Exactly.
But what are your thoughts on creating those as a way of sticking to your changes or your new year new me or whatever it might be?
I think that's why I had a different approach this year. where I said I was like, I'm gonna take these small steps towards what I wanna be, and honestly, it gives me that opportunity to not go all or nothing, and instead, like, see slow changes that are that end up being, my progress and what I wanna be, or seeing things that, like, really don't work for me. Not everything is for everybody. And yes, I do think health is for everybody, but I everybody doesn't respond to the same motivation when it comes to working out or foods and things like that. So you have to like I think this is a time for me to test out. And so for me, I'm looking at it where, that's kind of the approach I'm taking anyways. Like since the start of January, I've started to say, okay, this is what I want to see changes in. And this is my trial and error time. So I give, and I can just, start fresh when spring happens. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that. I do. I love that idea. I think that might be something that with creating kind of like the space for me to fast and do some things that I thought I could never do. I really like the idea of incorporating the start of it now. And maybe like the spring is really when you jump it off, when you have that. Because honestly, like, especially for me, I like to work out outside. I can't work out outside right now. It's insane. I don't want, listen, people, for those of you who don't come for me in the comments about how it's so cold up in Chicago or Philadelphia or New York or this, that, and the other. I don't care. I live in Florida for a reason. And right now it has been peaking at 63 degrees in Florida. That's been the high. And we are getting ready to go into a weekend where it's in the 20s. No, I'm not going running. I don't care that you run in the snow or that you snow. I don't care. So don't come for me. But for me, the winter workouts for me are a struggle because in the winter time, when I was a deputy, I worked a swing shift. So there were many days in the middle of the week I'd be off. So my workouts, I would do them at noon because that was the warmest time of the day and I could go outside. Now I'm working where I'm at an actual job during those times, so I can't. So coming home from work and working out at like 5 o'clock, it's too cold for me. So it's very difficult. So I like the idea of kind of putting the systems in place now so that they are fully executed by the springtime. I really like that idea. So um, I feel like we had a really good conversation, but I wanted to end it by saying, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. I feel like people need to reframe the new year. I think that people need to recognize that the new year is not a magical moment other than saying happy new year, loving your family, kissing, hanging out with your spouse, that kind of thing. But it is and can be a meaningful marker, and you can start refining yourself. Understand that lasting change isn't going to come on January 1st. Um, it comes from making daily choices, recognizing that your brain can derail you, and you have to make those choices and override the brain sometimes repeatedly in order to actually have lasting change.
Completely agree. I think that this is a time to, like I say, to reflect. And when that new year when it strikes, you can sit there and say, okay, that's nice. Like we made it to another year, but who do I want to be in this next coming year? Like it's a time to reflect. Who do I want to be? And then when you
Yeah.
are building, do believe you need to take steps towards your change. But when you're building to what you want to be, then, so be it. But yes, I feel like it's a balance between staying disciplined and not being in a rush to be like perfect. You do need to stay disciplined and still take steps towards it. It's not to be like, let's think about running and seeing if that burns calories. No, it's not going to happen. But it's it's good to be like, okay, what is going to work for me? Let me take the steps towards it in a mini habit way. Um, and then go on for there. So I believe that.
This has been exactly everything I thought it would be. So thank you for talking with me.
Thanks for talking with me.
I love it. Well, I'm Monique, and that's Kasha, and this conversation is over.